Hey guys, welcome back to Wax Pro Academy Uncut. I'm Erica.
And I'm Rachel.
Today we have a very fun episode planned for you. But first, a disclaimer.
The disclaimer. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So today is our episode where we talk all about our horror client stories. And maybe not horror, but learning experiences. You know, in this industry, there's a lot of things that we see and we are exposed to that, while are laughable, they play a huge part in how we continue to conduct business moving forward. So quickly, we want to just outline that anything that we speak about today is not to make fun of any client we've ever had in the past, but merely, again, just expose the things that you'll see in the future in this industry. So anything that we talk about today are not current clients. They're not to make fun of or belittle, but really just if you can't laugh at all of the things that we've seen in this industry, then you truly will cry. So to make light of it, we're going to talk about some of the craziest things we've seen in the industry and kind of how to handle them, best practices, and give our insight on, again, like what we could have done better or how you could potentially handle the situation moving forward.
Right. And so the most important part to remember is that, you as a potential future esthetician or wax specialist, wax pro, that you will come across situations where you might not know how to handle it. So maybe just watching this episode will kind of click and you'll remember, oh, that's right. I saw Rachel speak about that, or Erica, and how to best handle it. So that's truly our intention here is to give you the lesson and the support behind how to deal with some of these circumstances.
I had a little bit of hesitation when we talked about doing this episode because I was like, I want to remain or have this level of professionalism that is maintained throughout our podcast and, everything that we stand for as Wax Pro Academy. But we've seen some crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff, worthwhile mentioning. Yeah, and there's definitely a sense of confidentiality that your clients want you to maintain with them. And so again, kind of why we were a little bit hesitant to share, but ultimately for the greater good, which is, the lesson behind it and preparing our students for their future in waxing.
100%. So we're going to kick it off with a story about periods. We wax primarily women. So this is something that you're going to see a ton. I had a client. I feel like every story is going to start with that. I had a client. I had a client and she came in for a Brazilian wax and she disrobes, gets on the table. I have her lay palms of her feet touching. And I noticed that she has, a little bit of period blood on the inner labia and it's starting to pool on the table. And my gut reaction was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to embarrass this woman. I didn't want to draw attention to it. So I just cleansed her quickly, talked to her through the whole thing and waxing her, hugs her knees to her chest. Again, it's like, we all know where the period blood ends up and this woman is covered in it. And I just was at the time not a confident enough waxer to draw attention to it, ask her to put a tampon in, clean herself up. So I just thought I can handle it. I'll just do it by myself and continue to kind of cleanse, wax. But it's hard because when you have any sort of moisture on the skin, blood, unfortunately included, the wax doesn't adhere. So it was a ton of work on my behalf and like a huge blood spill issue, right?
Right. Contamination,
all those things. So, what I should have done was asked her to put a tampon in, stop the service, but I didn't feel comfortable to do that. So I just kind of continued on waxing her. And so then we finish the service. She gets up, she stands up. I turn around quickly, like as she's getting dressed, and I watch her pull her underwear up and she had a full bloody pad in her underwear.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I'm kicking myself like, oh my God, this woman knew the entire time that she was on her period. I'm sitting here like, I didn't want to embarrass her, but she knew. She knew the whole time. And then I felt so silly, like, okay, this is exactly why these policies are in place to avoid that entire thing. And if I had just said, oh, by the way, you need a tampon, and she might have said, oh my gosh, yeah, I was wearing a pad. I didn't realize that I needed to wear a tampon, but I said nothing. And I was the one that had to deal with the consequences. So,
right. So like the main lesson in that story is that you as a wax pro in the wax suite, you're going to have your own policies. So you have to be very firm and consistent with what your policies are. And so if waxing on someone's menstrual cycle, your, policy is you need a tampon, then you have to stick with that. Um, definitely a blood spill, I guess, liability in this instance. So, us sharing these types of stories, it's a huge, vulnerable moment for us because we were once inexperienced and just kind of rolling with it. So hopefully if you hear this, you establish what your policy is going to
Mhm.
be. And honestly, they're not going to be embarrassed. They're not. I've now dealt with several scenarios where women are on their cycle, and I simply say, yeah, not a problem. I just need you to be wearing a tampon to avoid blood spill. And if they can't wear a tampon or don't choose to wear a tampon, then we'll just reschedule. And they're very understanding of that. So, moral of that story is just stand firm on your policies
Mhm.
and, vocalize them professionally without embarrassing your client.
100%. I think that's one of the biggest things that clients will reach out to us about. I will get a text probably like a couple times a month saying, "Oh my gosh, I just got my period. I need to reschedule. Or is it okay if I come in?" And again, it's up to you as the service provider that you get to decide. I know girls that are like, "Nope, I don't wax on anyone's period." Or like us, we're like, "That's fine." But same thing as Erica said, you just have to be wearing a tampon. And again, yes, stand by that
Right.
and enforce the policy.
Also, just some tips around that is letting your client know that, you will be more sensitive because, your hormones are heightened and your sensitivity is heightened. So, also, just, laying out the expectation of what the service will feel like if you are getting wax on your
Mhm.
cycle. Sometimes it's inevitable. Like maybe they're traveling that weekend and like they absolutely have to get waxed today. And typically clients are like very modest and they're like, apologetic, and there's no need to be, embarrassed if you are a client waxing on your cycle, but just being transparent that you are and confirming with your Wax Pro, what are your policies around this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think while we're still on the topic of the period, I have another story. We were discussing when I was in beauty school, my instructor shared with us her story of when when she was doing a live demo for the class of how to do a Brazilian. The woman, the client, the model had a tampon and was on her period, and she went to lay the strip over the labia. She grabbed the tampon string with the wax and ripped the tampon out of this woman's body with an audience, no less. Like to happen one on one with your client, mortifying. To be this client and have an audience with, 10 soon to be estheticians watching. I mean, I cannot even imagine what the energy in the room was like. Like, oh my gosh, ripped your tampon out.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So sorry, look away.
No.
But in saying that, it's really important to make sure that you are trained on how to wax
Mhm.
when someone's on their cycle and wearing a tampon. And our curriculum does cover a couple of techniques on how to wax someone on their cycle so that you don't grab their tampon string and yank that out because that's honestly worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. Like how embarrassing for everyone involved. It's terrible.
Rough.
Okay, so next I had a client who, oh, I think she's arguably maybe the hardest client I ever encountered. And she was hard for me for certain reasons, hard on the management side for Erica for other reasons, but just really tough. So this was when we worked for a different wax corporation, one that we've been very clear about not speaking of, but a wax chain that Erica worked management side. I was a waxer. And, I had been there for a number of years. And I'm proud to say that I got all of the hard clients because I think my bedside manner, and still is, one of my best qualities as a waxer. And so I was able to, I don't know, attempt to handle this woman in a way that I don't know, she needed to be handled, if that makes sense. So when you were to book an appointment and you were coming from a different wax center, we could see all of your client notes pop up. And so this woman had been fired from like 4, 5,
Yeah.
6 different
Several
locations
locations.
across the
Mhm.
valley. And I remember Erica saying, like, okay, you've got this lady on your books later. She's going to be tough. Like, I can read all the client notes and see that she's given the waxers and the front desk a hard time at every other location. But, and I love that about Erica's management style was just really confident that like we can turn any service around. We were super confident in our management abilities and our waxing abilities that she was like, they can't handle them, but we can.
We can.
So I get this woman, she comes in, you can kind of tell she's crazy. She gives off the energy of like, she probably mistreats her servers at restaurants and she's not very nice to the front desk staff. And We didn't let that shake us. I take her back. She's like kooky, but again, manageable. I wax her. She kind of gave me a hard time, but just like super, super particular, lots of like demands. I don't say requests because they weren't. They were like just demanding. And it was tough. I mean, and it's hard to not let it rattle you, even as experienced as I was at the time, because you want to give a good service. And when it feels like it's on you to turn it around, it's a lot. So she comes in, she's fairly normal. She pre-books. I see her 3 weeks later, and she comes in 3 weeks later and she's wearing head to toe like a beekeeper outfit.
Yeah. like a land scene. Like,
yeah, it looks like she was like going to go fencing, or yes, she had
Lansing?
Lansing. So it's all white, like the head dress with like the vent through it, and then like the overlay. And it was just full white gloves all the way up, past her elbows. And we're all like,
what's happening here?
This checks out for this woman in particular. So she comes back. I mean, and she was booked for like brow, I think Brazilian, maybe lower leg, like to be with her for an extended period of time. This wasn't like a quick lip wax. Like you had to really prepare yourself to handle this woman. So she walks in and she tells the front desk, that she wanted to do her eyebrows, but she was scared because there was some like triangle of death between waxing your eyebrows, your lip, and your nose that she had seen on like Dr. Oz or something.
Like you couldn't touch it or you would die.
Yes. She was like which is so funny to me because I'm like, if that is going to take you out, I feel like you're not built for this world. I don't know. It was just crazy. So she comes back. I'm like going to do the center of her eyebrow and she's freaking out. She takes off her head dress, of course, but is still dressed in the rest. And every time we saw this woman, it was something like that, just like completely outlandish. And, we're like laughing and making light of it amongst each other. Like, oh my gosh, this woman's nuts. But just knowing that was very like something was coming. So then the next time she comes in 4 weeks later, she completely abused the front desk staff. She came in, there's policies in place at this time where you couldn't check the client out ahead of time before they had seen their service provider in the event of you adding on a service, removing a service. Not doing a service, because a lot of the front desk girls at the time didn't have clearance to like alter a transaction or void a transaction.
Or refund.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the girls would always tell them like, oh, you could go back with your waxer, and if any changes are made, we'll handle that after the service. Well, she comes in this day and is like on one. She wants to check out. She's in a hurry. She wants to pay and tip and do the whole thing before she gets taken back. And the front desk girl was very gracious and kind and was just like, we can't do that. Here's why. Lady didn't care. She appeased her finally by letting the client think that she was checked out, but didn't. You could like put the transaction in this
it's like a hold.
Yeah. You hold it before so that she could make changes to it in the event that changes were made, whatever. She comes back, the woman comes back, and I'm waxing her, and she is terrible. I mean, she's cussing the front desk girl out. Then she's complaining to me about the front desk girl and that I don't know that I'll come back here. And I'm thinking like, we don't even need your business. Like, this is just not worth it to experience this level of abuse as a service provider, the disrespect. And we did, because we're all young. We're all super young. And it's like, if the manager's not on site, we didn't want to step on toes. And it was like grin and bear it. And I've come to learn now, being in the industry as long as I have, that like, you do not have to grin and bear it, but more on that later. So she comes in, she's freaking out. She is talking terribly about the front desk girl, who is a super smart girl. Not that it matters, but she was super smart and she's just doing her job. And this woman is like, belittling her. She's incompetent, stupid, whatever. I do the service. As I'm doing the service, she's telling me, well, I don't think I'm going to tip you today because I don't like how you guys handled this situation. And I said, that's fine. What you do with your money is fine, but I can't sit here and allow you to talk this way about my coworkers and the staff in this establishment. Like, this is crazy. So I can end the service now. And I think because I like gave her a little bit of I barked back a little, she somehow had a level of respect for me that she hadn't prior, which is like so fucked up.
It's ironic.
Like, okay.
Yeah. That's all it took.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm proud of you because you don't do that
not
often.
That person. No. And as we continue to tell these stories and go through all of them, the common theme is that I handle a lot and I take a lot. But there was just this time with her that I'm like, no more. Like, you're crazy and you can't come in and be mean to all of our staff and expect that we'll continue to service you. So she tells me she's not going to tip me. I say, that's fine. Bark back. Then she says, actually, sorry that I said that. I will tip you. And actually, can I do my underarms if you have time? Which is just
The
mind
irony.
blowing. The irony, because I'm like, this is exactly why we wouldn't check your service out ahead of time if you were to make any changes to your service. You did, I said that to her. I said, oh, this right here is a perfect example of why we will not check your service out ahead of time, because now we have to add on a service and it would have created another transaction and, more work for the front desk girl. And she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Whatever. Finish the service. She goes and checks out. She's sweet as pie to the front desk girl, of course.
For now.
She leaves. And then no sooner does she call the center. And she wants to speak to a manager. And we're like, of course we couldn't get rid of her that easy, right? Like
Right.
there's no way that she was just going to let it go.
Right.
So she calls, she wants to speak to Erica. I don't think that you were actually at the center. Didn't you
No.
call her remotely? But
Yeah, I did
she
call her
demanded to speak to a manager. She was calling back because she wanted to remove the tip that she had just given me like 8 minutes prior. I'm sure she's sitting in the parking lot just fuming,
yeah.
like adjusting her outfit.
Beekeeper outfit.
And she's like, you know what? Obviously a tip is a tip and we're grateful, but I think she like severely undertipped me as well, which was just funny to be like, okay, take your $6 back. Like I didn't need it to begin with. You can't come in and be this mean to people and just expect that they will continue to provide you a service that you don't deserve. So she calls and she freaks out on Erica. Then she wants to speak to Erica, and you can take over the story.
Right. And it's actually coming back to me because I told Rachel, I actually blocked the story out and we reference it by, client name because it was very traumatic. It was like involving a lot of people at the center, mostly the front desk, and they were like crying about her. And, when you manage a team, they're your team. And if you're an owner and you have employees, you know exactly what I'm talking about is you have to have their back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, be professional. Yes, the customer has feedback and we are in business because of customers, but not someone who's blatantly going to disrespect or try to intentionally hurt your teammates. That's crazy. So when I was speaking to her, she asked me who I was. I've never heard of you. I've never seen you. And I'm like, no, I actually checked you out last time. And that's when she said, oh, you're that little Mexican girl. First of all, I don't think I'm little. Let's start there.
Yes, I am Mexican.
But she started going into race. And there was a point where I think I blacked out because she used the S word. Starts with S, ends with pig. And at that point, I was done. I was like, I don't care. Honestly, if this costs me my job, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm very good at being condescending in a professional manner. So I basically, after she said, I'm going to leave a review about you and Rachael and the front desk girl, who is such a great person.
Lovely.
Oh my God, she's so great. And I said, oh my God, you know what? I'm going to send you a link to her
directly
right now, because I think it's super important to get feedback from people like you. So it turned into this whole thing. She wanted to talk to the owners. I said, you know what? Gladly. And they're going to call you today. And so they did. And they basically told her to F off.
Yeah,
and
good.
like, she was actually never welcome back in that company again, because come on.
We were the final straw.
Final straw. So moral of this story is, you're going to do your absolute best to provide a good service and maintain professionalism, have your teams back, hear the customer out. We have to be reasonable. We're in business. It's a service industry. So you can't just be like F off immediately. We did our absolute best. Seriously, we did on every level, front, back, management. But do know that if you are being belittled, disrespected, or you feel attacked, like in my case, I did. She was coming for me personally. You do not have to service them. And I promise you those $60 that your, business is intaking or you personally is not worth it. So pick and choose who your clients are and stand firm on your policies and have your teams back.
Yeah, 100%. It's like we obviously in the service industry, like we want your money. But we want we want to build our book, and at times when you might feel desperate to be building your book, or I've been there where I'm like, I can't afford to fire a client. Like I might hate her, but I'm not super busy, and so like I need your money. I need to service you in order to like stay afloat myself. And there's a tipping point where you kind of reach a space where you can decide what you're willing to put up with and at what cost. And it's just, there are clients that it's not worth it. And you have to, like for me, someone that's completely non-confrontational, have to kind of like grow a pair and be like, you know what, this isn't a good fit. I'm not going to wax you any longer. So that can be really hard.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay, next. This one is a big change of pace, but there was a client that came into, again, said center.
A lot of experience here. That's why we don't knock it,
No.
you know?
And she was every 4 weeks Brazilian. This woman had no legs, like came in a wheelchair, no legs, wanted to get her Brazilian done, which first of all,
Power to you, sister.
power to you. Like, I think I don't know if that it would be on my radar if I didn't have legs. I'd be like, I probably don't care. I love
But
that.
she was married too.
She was married and she's got this
And she was a
man.
boss. I remember she was a boss.
She would bring the husband in, and on the appointments that she didn't have her husband. So when she would come in with her husband we would all go into the room together, and her husband would lift her onto the table, and she would get waxed, and she was so regular. And on the appointments that her husband couldn't make it, Erica would lift this woman onto the bed. And I was always so impressed by that. Like, I appreciate maintenance of the body. And so I love that was something that she continued to do. But we wanted to speak about it today because Erica has like a medical background, and she was comfortable lifting this woman onto the bed.
Right.
You
so
might not be.
Right.
Normally.
In saying that, so I did like my certified nursing assistant certificate like way back in the day, but a big part of that was body mechanics and how to shift a body around. So I knew I was trained and felt comfortable. So with that, we just want to, use this as an education opportunity. If you are not comfortable with doing that, you absolutely should not, move a person. You could hurt yourself. You could hurt them. It's a liability. So if you do have a client who is maybe handicapped, if they have their caregiver with them, that would be the preferred way to get them on your table. But never would we judge a client, turn a client away because they have a disability. We've had several clients with disabilities. Everyone deserves the opportunity to make themselves feel beautiful and upkeep and, wax or whatever that service is to them. So I just want to touch base though that, definitely if you're not trained to not move a body.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is a little bit wild.
Probably rated R.
This girl comes in for a Brazilian wax, lays down on the bed, wax the whole front of her Brazilian. She goes to hug her knees to her chest, and there is semen dripping out of her butt. Again, I was a very brand new waxer. I didn't know how to handle it. It caught me so off guard that I think that I just like froze, like the stiffy goats, how they pass out. Like that was me. I'm like, 1 second.
The stiffy goats.
And like this woman had no idea, where I'm like, did this just happen in the parking lot?
Did she?
Or did she? I don't know. And that's what it's so hard from like, am I unpunked?
Yeah. This is
like a hidden
shopper.
camera show. So you can imagine like the action of hugging your knees to your chest kind of pushed some things out. And so it comes dripping out, and I'm standing there, I'm twirling my wax, and I'm like, okay, so I just get a tissue, wipe the area, go right over it. Hindsight's a real bitch. Like, looking back, I'm like, I cannot believe that I just like went for it and wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need you to just like take a second and clean yourself up. I just was so frozen that I just did it.
Yeah.
And so again, these are these situations that we want to talk about with you that you would think you would never see, but somehow you will. So it's just super important to maintain a level of professionalism, that you're not going to embarrass your client, make them feel uncomfortable, still make them feel safe and in a space that they want to come back to. Like, and you can continue to service them, but also standing by like procedure and policy and
hygiene,
sanitation
sanitation
of letting them know like, oh, you know what? I need you to actually run to the restroom and clean up back here or whatever your verbiage is that you feel comfortable with, or like just clean it up and move on and continue the service. But it is something that, like I said, caught me completely off guard.
Totally. And just like sidebar again, hindsight, you're going to want to change your gloves, put on new gloves, hand sanitize because it's cross contamination, it's bodily fluids. And hygiene, sanitation are utmost, rules in the room when it comes to being an esthetician. And why people come to us is we're borderline medical, sterile environment, and they count on us to
Uphold that level.
uphold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely.
Wow. I'm like sweating. I feel like I have PTSD.
Right.
These things. Okay, next client. She is infamously known as, in my mind, the Dingleberry Lady.
Mm.
Sweet, sweet woman. I mean, just
Sweet Dingleberry.
yeah. Flight attendant, like precious, came in. Wax. Notice that a lot of these are about Brazilians because we're disrobed. It's in an intimate area. There's just a lot of room for error below the belt.
Bodily fluids.
Bodily fluids, yes.
Fecal matter.
So they're not all this, but this one definitely is. So wax the front of her Brazilian, again, hugs her knees to her chest. And this woman has like absolute dingleberries hanging out of her butthole hair. Just hanging on for dear life. Like if you could picture the size of like a gusher, and if you're a gusher lover, I'm sorry to do this to you,
So
but
sorry.
multiple. And I'm like, these things are like, they looked like artifacts. Like they were going to be dust. And I go, again, I don't know what to do. I don't feel comfortable telling her, do I cut them out of the hair? Do I wax over them? I don't know. Do I stop the service? And so I just say like, I'm just going to power through. And so I wax over them. I wax over them. And there's like maybe 3 on one side and 2 on the other. And I wax over them and they burst. They burst and there's poop everywhere. No. And like the wax is like laying smooth, bloop, laying smooth, bloop. And I'm like, I just do it and I remove. And of course it didn't like remove the hair that well because there's all of this extra stuff happening. But again, I don't say anything and I just do the service and I just think like, I don't want to embarrass this woman. And so I wax over, whatever, complete the service. And I'm thinking, because I like to think I'm like the nicest person in the world. I'm like, this is a one-time thing.
Right.
This
you're
is just
you're
like a one-off.
empathetic and understanding.
Yes. Okay.
You're understanding.
So then I pre-book her. She comes back this time, which this only makes the story funny because it's just like, again, the shock value of it. This woman comes in with a broken neck. And not that her neck is broke. Same woman comes back in 4 weeks. Not that her breaking her neck was funny, but it just was like, okay, if something is happening below the belt, like that would give you an excuse. Like if your range of motion is impaired, if like, yes, you're having a medical issue. So she comes in.
My range of motion is impaired today.
So she's got this neck brace on. And I was like, oh no, honey. I'm thinking like, it's going to be bad. Like, I wonder if she could even like turn to get back there. She lays down, hugs her knees to her chest. Same thing. The dingleberries are there. The dingleberry gushers are there. I wax over them. Finish. She leaves. She pre-books. It's like they come, they eat, they leave. Like it's like this was like Groundhog Day. And again, I'm like, well, she broke her neck. Like I feel bad. Maybe she couldn't get up.
So nice.
She comes back in 4 weeks. Guess what's there? The dingleberries. Of course they're still there.
I don't know. I was hoping for like a surprise. Like it's clean today.
No surprises, unfortunately.
I wonder if that's like a I don't know, like a health thing. I've never heard of that. I've never seen that, Rachel.
Okay, and to be fair, I saw it this time, well, the 2 times in a row, and I never saw it again. So I'm like, maybe it was an anomaly. Like maybe it was
3 times.
Well, it was 2 times back to back. Oh, right. Yes. So then the third, she came in again. Yeah.
And then after that, not again?
But yes, this woman comes in and she's like, I'm so sorry. I don't know if we should do a Brazilian. Like I'm having a little bit of irritation in the back. I'm allergic to, what is it? Bluebell ice cream. The fact that I even remember these things. And she was like, I had so much ice cream. I know. This is why we always said, like, I will write a book because the stuff that we have seen is wild. And it's, again, we have to laugh because we have so many clean clients and wonderful people. And this woman was wonderful. It just happened to be that she had shit on her ass. But it's just like,
Minor detail.
People are great, but you will see some stuff that you're like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So anyway, the Bluebell ice cream apparently gave her some irritation. She still had the issue, waxed her. I think after that, she started seeing a different waxer at our
old place,
which I was like, love you. Great. Well, it lasted. On to the next one. So
yikes.
All of that to say, yes, you will like poop. It happens. You see it a lot. We're waxing an area that the poop comes out of. So you will experience the poop on the butt. But again, not embarrassing your client, calling too much attention. The level of professionalism needs to remain in the suite. So
for sure. And also, please don't be scared. This isn't like every client.
No, this is like once in a blue moon, once in a blue bell.
Oh, man.
Thank you for that
pun. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. Okay, so this one is actually like sad, kind of.
Which one is this one?
Well, this girl comes in again for a Brazilian, and she has a full outbreak of herpes on her vagina. Like, it is not
Rachael,
like
it's HSV.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Call it what we must. There's nothing like when you see it for the first time, like in real life. And again, we talk about this level of tact and having to handle the situation correctly. This girl was young. She was probably like 18, 19. I think she was like just graduated or was about to be a college student, somewhere in there. And what really why I still remember this story, because over the years, you've seen questionable things, but and Erica will speak on it. Like, you never want to diagnose or tell anyone what something is. It's all like just recommendations of seeing a medical professional. But this girl had no clue. And she tells me, oh, my boyfriend said that it was just ingrown hairs. I think I went up to her with the wax and I said, oh my goodness. Okay. You have a lot of irritation here. I'm not comfortable waxing over this area as I could make the problem worse, blah, blah, blah. Gave her the spiel. But when she told me, my boyfriend told me it was an ingrown hair or a bunch of ingrown hairs, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for her, and that this episode could take a very violent turn of like, how dare a man tell you what's happening?
Right.
But like he must have known, or I don't know. There was just a lot of discomfort. And that is something that you will see, is like these uncomfortable situations that you really do just have to handle on the fly, and that we're not prepared for. And we are not, again, medical professionals to be able to diagnose. But even my response to her of like, okay, well, tell your boyfriend to fuck off. And I didn't tell her like, that's not herpes, but you need to respond in a way that is more professional.
Right. And because we are dealing with an area where obviously STIs can happen, STDs can happen, or just like irritation, right? Like yeast infections or bacterial infections, which are not necessarily STIs or STDs, but you're dealing with sexual health here. So, I think being a wax specialist, wax pro, waxer, whatever you call yourself, there is this absolute level of trust that your clients have with you. And you have to understand that there's an array of ages, experiences, both sexually, mentally, physically, emotionally, that you are not necessarily able to give advice to, even though you want to. And that's one of my probably weaknesses, is I have a lot of life experience, and I've often wanted to tell my clients, like, here's what you should do in your relationship, or, I think this could be this, or I've had this before. You have to remove yourself from it. And it's very, very general. And that's where you have to have self-control and separate your friendship from your professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you see, whether you think or know it's a wart, a blister, whatever, that it's irritation. If it's ingrown hair, it's irritation. If it's yeast infection, it's irritation. A blanket word, irritation. And the second part, and Rachael, you already hit on this, is letting them know very clearly, I am not a medical professional. This irritation, I would get looked at. I don't want to, diagnose you, because I can't. But I would get this looked at by a medical professional.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you handle that. The first time I saw something like that, like, I felt like I knew what it was, but again, I'm not qualified and I am not a doctor and I don't want to make anyone feel bad, but I also felt like there's an obligation just as a woman, like woman to let them know something's going on and flag them. And especially when they're so young and they might have someone influencing them or gaslighting them or knowing that they gave them something and say, no, it's not right.
Right.
So, yeah, there's an obligation for sure as just a human, but maintaining
Yeah.
professionalism.
Well, and I think just to really kind of wrap up this portion of the episode, creating this level of trust with our clients where it is a safe space and that, right, you might not be diagnosing them, but giving them a recommendation and just making them feel safe, that carries on through like your rest of the relationship with them. It's how you then are able to talk to them about product or why you're telling them that you recommend they come in every 3 weeks. You know, you want to build this level of trust. So you are taking care of them as a client from start to finish, not just actually during the service. And you know, we hear and see a ton of things in the wax suite. And while we're not talking specifics of all of the things that we've heard in the wax suite, that could be its own episode. But, you know, these people come in and it's like honesty hour. We joke that we are their therapist. There's
100%.
something happens when that door shuts. It's like this, I don't know, this
I'm
safe.
naked and the door
Yeah.
shut. I'm going to tell
Naked
you
and afraid.
everything.
Yeah. It's like that. Naked and afraid 2.0.
Right.
But they disrobe, and even like eyebrow clients, but it's just something happens where they just spill it all. And you hear all of these things, scandalous things, from affairs to fights with their husband to questioning their sexuality. I mean, like, I have heard it all. The things that I have heard, it blows my mind. And we want to handle all of these, you know, things that our clients tell us or that we see with our clients with grace and tact and professionalism so that they feel like it's a space that they can come back to and that they trust us. So
It's all about trust. If you take anything away from this episode, it's, you know, being a professional, building that relationship with them and maintaining that trust. So you have a lifelong client.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, there will be a part 2 to this episode. This was part 1. We have lots more to talk about, but I think that probably wraps up season 2, episode 1 of Wax Pro Uncut.
See you soon.
Thanks for coming.